Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. I look a hot mess, but it has to do with it going outside and on a breezy day and enjoying the sun and the breeze for the first time in a long time. So that's why my hair, I just came in and my hair is just kind of windblown and a mess. But I want to touch base with you guys. I will do a reading today on the Scott Peterson case that has now been brought back through the LA Innocence Project. That was a case that I followed when it happened 22 years ago. At that time, I guess it was 2002, I had three preteen children. And so I was older than Lacey. However, there was a connection because when my sister was young, she lived in California, and she believes she was one of Lacey's like preschool or Head Start teachers back in California, because she remembered the name. You know, the little girl had the same name, and she was, a cute little, darker child, like with dark hair and dark eyes. So my sister remembered her. And so we were all heartbroken that there was a connection at all, but we were heartbroken at all because the case was so sad. So we followed it very carefully and closely. And, we know that the outcome was that the husband was found guilty and that he was sentenced to death, but that was overturned. And so now the case is being brought back to life because he says that there's evidence that wasn't checked into, and he wants to get a new trial. And I think he's been granted a new trial. I think that's happened already, that it's going to happen. It's been agreed to. So that's what we're going to do today. However, I do want to speak a little bit personally before I get into that, especially because I have so many women, I think, who follow me. I have some men, of course, and for the women in your life, you may want to listen. But not too long ago, well, I did have COVID. I had COVID and I was sick for about 2.5 weeks before I tested negative, So I was sick for the better part of 3 weeks. However, this has nothing to do with COVID. But back in June, long before I had COVID, I started feeling a different type of back pain that I didn't normally feel. Now, I live with chronic back pain. I already have it like documented that I have a deterioration of my spine. And so I walk with a cane and I'm in a lot of pain most of the time, But this pain, one day I noticed it was different. And so I went to my doctor, like you should. And I showed him where it was, and I said, I wonder if it's my kidneys. And he felt around and he said, no, that's not your kidney. You got a muscle strain, because you babysit the grandbaby and you pick them up all the time. So I was like, oh, that makes sense. And so I just left, and I just figured I sprained a muscle. But every day, and this was back in June, mid-June, and every day I babysit and I pick up the baby, and every day my back got worse and worse and worse. And here I'm thinking all this time that it's a muscle strain. Until finally, this past Saturday, today's Wednesday. So this past Saturday, because the housework has been going to the heck in a handbasket because I babysit 30 hours a week, and then I'm so tired on my days off, and I hurt so bad that I just can't keep up with the housework. But after I did a video, I think I winced in the video. I was like, ooh, it hurt, I decided to do housework because I figured I have to at least do something. So I figured I'll at least do the kitchen. So I went into the kitchen and I started cleaning the kitchen, and I was in so much agony, serious pain, that I was just crying, doing the cleaning down the counters and cleaning the appliance. I couldn't walk 4 feet from one counter to another to get paper towel. And I had to ask my husband to come into the kitchen to give me paper towel because I couldn't walk the distance. And I don't know what he thought of that. I kind of thought he thought like, wow, you're really milking this back pain, you know? Until finally, I was finished cleaning the kitchen. I went into the bedroom and I laid in the bed, and I think I just cried because some of you may know when you're in extreme pain, where the pain is excruciating, all you can do is cry, you know? So I started crying, and he's like, I think you need to go to the hospital. I was like, yeah, I think you're right. So we get me to the hospital. Now, we live in an area where we have a lot of what we thought were high quality hospitals. You know, we have, and I don't want to say the names because I don't want anybody suing me, but we went to a Philadelphia hospital branch that's here, and it's one of the biggest in Philadelphia. But they have a satellite hospital because we figured it would be the best one. And I went through emergency, and the care, they did all the right tests. You know, they didn't do everything probably to Hoyle, but they did, based on my description of what was hurting me, they did do appropriate tests, and they discovered that I had a kidney infection. So it was the kidney itself that was infected, and it was in a bad way. But the treatment was deplorable. The treatment was terrible. I mean, the way I would describe it is, at best it was negligent, at worst it was abuse. And I'm not talking about the technical tests they took. I'm talking about how they treat other human beings. And I don't know if it's because I'm older, and, you know, older people, maybe they just don't care, maybe, you know, or I don't know what it was. I'm a nice person. I'm very nice to people, you know. I mean, throughout the whole ordeal, if anybody did anything for me, I mean, in between my tears, I would say, thank you for helping me, you know, like that kind of thing, you know. So I'm not unpleasant. But any rate, just beware. And my husband stayed with me the first night, and I was in the hallway. I understand hospitals are crowded. They don't have enough room for you at the inn anymore. And I was in the hallway till like 2:30 in the morning before I got a room. And the room wasn't even a proper hospital room. It was just kind of like a workstation room that they shoved me in. That wasn't really a proper room, but I was just happy to have some privacy at that stage. But I could tell you, like, at least a dozen things where it was abusive treatment. You know, the nurses might be capable nurses, but mean. I mean mean. You know, like, if you don't keep your arms straight, I'm going to have to, and my arms were black and blue. My hands were black and blue. I was so dehydrated that they couldn't get anything, you know, they couldn't get any of the things through my veins. And they were banging it, you know, and I understand that they do what they have to do. And I would wince, you know, because it would hurt, you know. But one nurse, she had this, there was this thing 2 feet from my head, and it was beeping nonstop. Beep, 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 beep. And it was because the needle in the only spot that they could find to give me anything intravenous, the needle had bent. And the thing was beeping because there was a kink, you know, there was a beep, there was a bend. And she would use, if I were to say, could you stop this machine? I'm trying to sleep, you know, or whatever. She would come in and she would say, well, if you keep bothering me to turn off this machine, I can always go back in your hand and we can try that if that's what you like. She would punish me by threatening me that she was going to put, you know, that she was going to pincushion me again in my hand, which we already knew they couldn't be done. You know, and I was like, no, I'm just asking you to turn the machine off. Could you give me the drugs orally? I mean, I know you like to use your fancy equipment, but, you know, I can swallow a pill for antibiotics. I mean, I realize it might not be as strong, but it's not helping me if it's not going in my body because the needle's bent, you know. Anyway, I left before I was really supposed to leave because I couldn't stay there another minute. And it was a horrific ordeal, and this is supposed to be one of the best hospitals in the country, at least in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia it is. Philadelphia top notch, but not so in South Jersey. So anyway, for you older girls, especially if you have kidney problems or kidney infections, pay attention. I never had a fever. I never had pain with urination. I don't want to get too graphic, but I never had the telltale symptoms of like a UTI, which it really wasn't a UTI, it was a kidney infection, but I never had the telltale symptoms. So I had no fever and I had no pain other than the excruciating pain in my back that just got worse and worse and worse and worse. So girls, get that stuff treated. Go to the doctor. If your doctor says it's a muscle, say, could you give me an ultrasound, or could you give me an x-ray, or could you do something? I just sort of accepted it because I'm just that kind of person. But anyway, okay, back to Scott Peterson. I've never put it to the cards in the years that I've had this channel because it was a long gone case 22 years ago. So the case was, I'm sure I did readings on it back in the day, but I didn't do it any on video. So here we go. Oh, for today's video, for today's reading, I'm using the Tarocchi Francesi Parisi from the 17th century. And this is known as the Anonymous Tarot of Paris. And this one was created by the International Museum of Tarot I think it's in Milan, or it's somewhere in Italy. And why did I choose this one for that case? Because just one little connection. It's because this is it's an anonymous tarot of Paris. And Scott Peterson called his girlfriend from Paris. Well, he told her he was calling her from Paris when he was really at his wife's vigil. Isn't that? Whether or not he's guilty of murder, his wife's vigil, where people are mourning and sorrowful that this beautiful young woman is missing and her little baby, her husband is pretending at this vigil, is pretending that he's in Paris watching the fireworks, calling his girlfriend. I don't think we're talking about a high caliber of human being. So I think it's very easy for many of us, including myself, to believe that he is really guilty. However, you want to make sure, especially if someone's talking about the rest of their life or a death penalty case, I guess you can't leave any stone unturned if there's a chance that they might be innocent. And his family, those who are still living, his siblings, one of them became an attorney to assist in his case. So his family stands behind him. They don't see anything pathological or, they don't see any psychopathy in his behavior or anything like that. Her family, her mother is still alive, and her brother is still alive. All her girlfriends believe he was guilty. And if you're not really familiar with the case, then I would suggest you watch. There's a recent Netflix 3-part program that is recently done on the eve of this Innocence project, which now the case has been brought back, and a lot of us will be watching it carefully again. But I just want to put to the cards, and because these are very large cards, I'll just do maybe a few 3-card reads with it. For one, I'll go into my meditative place because I do want a meaningful response. But I think I'm going to ask, the universe to tell us what we need to know about what evidence will they find on the tape? Back in 2002, when this went down, and I think her body was found in 2003, I think they had DNA, but they didn't have the sophistication that we have now. And so, and I don't think they ever bothered to test the tape for DNA at that time, because I think they felt they had enough circumstantial evidence against him. But for whatever reason, the defense team didn't even want to do it, because maybe the defense team was afraid that his DNA would be on the tape, so they didn't push it. But now, after it sat in the water for 4 months, and then after it sat on a shelf now for the past 20 some years, maybe there's enough that it's been deteriorated so that maybe he's not as afraid of his own DNA popping up. And if he's innocent, then let's see what we'll find. So I'm going to go off into my meditative place, but the question will be, what will they find? What will they discover? What new insights will there be after the DNA test on the tape that was taped around Lacey's feet, her pant legs? Okay, I'll be right back. Alrighty. Give it a few more shuffles. This is an awkward deck. I really wish somebody like Artisan put it out there would maybe do a really, a reliable recreation of this deck, in a small tarot-sized deck. That would be awesome. It would be awesome. Somebody and anybody. Or Marco, if you're listening, that would be awesome if you could do it. Like a nice quality, a nice quality petite size or regular size tarot deck of the Tarot of Marseille. Excuse me, the Anonymous Tarot of Paris. Okay, Le Batelier. Well, my, understanding of Le Batelier is conning, tricking, insincerity. We have a dog. They did have a dog. The wife was supposed to be walking the dog, and that was one of the things that she was supposed to do that day. When he was questioned about how the morning went of the day she disappeared, he said that she got up earlier than him. She was watching Martha Stewart on the television because it was her favorite show. And her plans were to walk the dog, mop the floor, and go grocery shopping for a Christmas party the next day. Now, this is a wife who's 8 months pregnant, and she's going to walk the dog, mop the floor, and go grocery shopping. And his plans for the day were to go golfing. So back then, that always kind of bugged me. It's like, what man with a pregnant wife who's like 8 months pregnant doesn't say, babe, I'll go grocery shopping. Don't worry about the floor, and I'll walk the dog. I mean, if he had the whole day off to go golfing, why did she have to do any of those things? Anyway, I see the dog. Maybe there will be dog hairs on that thing, on the tape. The only person they can incriminate is the dog. But there is some, there are other people involved. Okay, so we have the magician, and maybe he's willing to have the tape looked into, because maybe he did have an accomplice. Maybe he's willing to pin it on the accomplice. I don't know. We'll see. Other cards. The World card. Well, this suggests that things will be, it's not the Judgment card where things are made crystal clear, things are made clear, but things might be made whole. And then we see the World card. So all these cards so far, except for this one, are the higher order cards. Okay, so now we have the Queen of Coins, which is her. Because she was a woman who was very homemakery. She was, very happy to be a wife and mother. She was very excited about her life, as she should have been. It was a wonderful life they made together. I don't understand why some people just aren't satisfied with wonderful lives they have, but so perhaps there'll be something about Lacey that'll be on the tape. The woman here is holding something. It looks like it's coming from behind her, so she's holding her cape or her sash or her scarf, which in the context of the question, this could be seen as the tape. Now, Lacey's hair was found wrapped around a needle-nosed plier, which was probably used in the disposing of her remains. But the defense made a big thing about, well, of course it was her house, and so, it was on her property, so why wouldn't her hair be wrapped around a needle-nosed plier in a boat that she didn't know they owned? Because he did buy a boat. He bought a boat that he kept private. Nobody knew he had this boat. Okay, so we have La Batelière, which is 1, and then we have Le Monde, the world, which is 21. So 1 and 21 is 22, which when we reduce, whether we subtract 22, we get 0, or if we leave it at 22, it still is the Fool. So let me pull the Fool card. Now, this is a very interesting Fool card because in the depiction of this Fool, we have a man who's almost like he's looking in a mirror, seeing a reflection of his own self, right? The Fool is gazing upon the face of a fool. So that's a very interesting take, isn't it? It's almost like, I guess if you want to get into psychological terms, there's probably something to be said for it. So we have the Fool card is the quintessential card at the end. And the Fool card is a risk-taking card. I guess he feels he has nothing to lose and everything to gain. He's already spending the rest of his life in prison. So even if the only DNA on the tape is his own, it's not like things are going to get any worse. So he's willing to take a chance. Maybe some guy who sold him the tape, at the hardware store, maybe that guy's DNA will be on the tape, right? So there's always a chance someone else's DNA will be on the tape. If he's guilty, that's the last ditch thing that I'm guessing that he's hoping. If he's truly innocent, then I guess he's hoping, that they're going to find something on that tape that's going to be incriminating to someone else. But if he's guilty, that's a real ballsy move, because if he's guilty, chances are good that the only DNA that's going to be on there would be his or hers. It could be hers if it was tape that was in the house. I mean, she is holding. The female, the Queen of Coins, is holding something that looks like blue tape, which I think it was blue tape. So there could be a chance that her DNA will be on it, and the suggestion that there is a con or a trick, something that was underhanded. Maybe there were other people. Maybe there was an accomplice. Maybe he's hoping, at this stage that something will pop up that wasn't him. But front and center of the original cards, I think we have the sense that justice will prevail, even though this isn't justice, and even though this isn't the judgment card. It is a card of things falling into place and things manifesting enough to understand what's going on, because it is the World card. So I don't know if this reading was helpful or not, but I do think it's interesting in the context of what I asked, which is what will we find on what will that relay? So I think we'll get to the bottom. I think it's just like a last ditch effort. He has, when you have nothing to lose, you have nothing to lose, right? So do it, right? And, even if he only sees, even if the evidence only shows his DNA on it, what's he got to lose? Nothing. There may be her DNA. Who knows? Maybe there might be somebody else's DNA. But at the very least, this card suggests a con, a trick. Maybe there will be dog DNA. Maybe the dog hairs will be on it or something. Now, since we have this beautiful deck out, let's ask another question regarding the case. I guess we can ask if Scott Peterson is indeed guilty. I'll go off into my meditative place because I do want an accurate reading, and then I'll be back. Okay. Just for the record, is Scott Peterson guilty of this crime? Now, my prejudice is that he's guilty. As I said, I followed it very intently, back in the day. And my mother, my sister, we were all invested in following the case and talking about it. And we all felt that he did it. And so that's my prejudice. And so you should be made aware of my prejudice. But I will do my best to be objective, and I always just try to follow my instincts when it comes to the cards. Okay, fortitude. Finding out what you're made of. Hanging in there, perseverance. Death. Six Cups. And Six Cups to me is kind of like a mini love card, right? The lover card, in a way. It relates. It's number 6, and it's a positive number. It's a perfect number, and it's the number of emotions. And so it would be a very loving message. Okay, so let's see what the Quint card would be. So we have 11 and 13, which would give us 24, and 24 and 6 gives us 30. Minus 22 would give us 8, which would give us justice. So let me pull justice. Okay, so bearing in mind that my prejudice is that I believe he's guilty, but I do want to see what the DNA shows, or the new trial shows, because if someone is innocent, you got to give them that chance. But that's my prejudice going in, so I just want to make you aware of it. And I'm trying to read the cards as objectively as I can, as sincerely as I usually do. Now, the first thing I want to mention is we have a loving card, a loving cup card, right? That I described already. And we see the death card kind of walking away from the 6 of Cups. And then moving toward the fortitude card, which I describe usually, a card that shows what you're made of, or perseverance. So a person could say that the death card is walking away from the loving card, the card that shows emotional attachment, and emotional investment, and that the death card is walking away from that, so that maybe they could take it to mean that he didn't harm his wife. But then why is the death card here? To show that he didn't kill his wife. But then it's walking toward a woman, or a person, right? In tarot, a male or female card could represent either any gender. But we have somebody using brute force, in this case, on the lion. to Did he turn his back on the loving part and use brute force, right? Use brute force. Now, there was no sign or evidence of a struggle. There was no blood, but the manner of death in their case, his case, if he is guilty, could have been suffocation with a pillow. They were in bed, So what evidence would there be? And there would be brute force, right? I mean, he had to use some strength to do that. And it does show who he is, as far as, finding out what you're made of. Now, for justice to show up, and when I asked, was he responsible for the death of his wife? I know it's a yes or no question. And so I didn't say odd numbers will be yes and positive, I didn't do anything like that. I didn't say negative will be, positive numbers will be yes and negative numbers will be no. I didn't do anything like that. I want to read the cards to get the answer. But when we get the justice card, it almost feels like, well, justice has prevailed. He's guilty. And this is how it played out. Turned his back on the love, showed us what he's made of by using brute force. Wow. So that's my take on the cards. Because if he's innocent, and I'm reading to my prejudice, these cards don't make as much sense. I mean, it definitely looks like death happened. Death happened by brute force. And he turned his back on love. And justice has prevailed and will prevail. So that's a very interesting read. Let's try one more. And also, I'd like to thank those of you who hung in there. I know I always do videos. Let me flip the camera for a second. I frequently do several videos. So when I sit down to do a video like today, I'll sit down and I'll do a couple more videos today. So you'll see me in the same pink top for the next couple of days, because I try to do a few videos, because there are times like when I had COVID for 3 weeks and then I babysit my grandchild, and then I was in the hospital for 4 days. So I was sick for 3 weeks, watched my grandchild for a week, and then I was in the hospital for 4 days. There's big gaps, right? So if I don't do videos, a few, to release every other day or something like that, I try to keep my videos coming, right? So, but anyway, in my absence, many of you probably didn't even realize I was missing, because I released videos consistently, or every other day or something like that. And some of you, I want to thank you very much for, giving me, like super thanks. I got a few in my absence, and so that was wonderful. And I'm humbled by your generosity, and I appreciate feeling appreciated. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so I don't know, should we do one more for the Scott Peterson case? Since I have this deck out and we've dedicated this reading and this deck to that case. Let me go off camera and see if I can come up with another related question. And if not, I'll come up with another question. And I'll use these same cards for the interpretation. Okay, I thought of another question. And the question is, when he was arrested, he was in San Diego, where his sister lived. So it's not unusual that he would have been in San Diego visiting his sibling. However, it is close to Mexico, like 30 miles, within 30 miles of the Mexican border. He had dyed his hair, so he changed his appearance. He dyed his hair and his beard to be blonde. He had $15,000 in cash. He had his brother's ID card with a different name that looked a lot like his brother. So maybe his brother, I don't know if his brother said, take my ID card, because, that would be something, if he felt like the authorities were coming down on him or going to arrest him and his family thought he was innocent, it's possible that the brother said, well, take my ID card. The brother had the same last name, I'm sure. I don't know. because each one of the parents had children by other people, and Scott was the only child they had in common. So it's possible that the boy, the brother, could have been from the mother who's had a different last name. So he could have been given an ID of a brother who looked a lot like him with a different last name and a different first name. So it's possible. So he had his brother's ID. And I don't know what the last name was, but that's interesting. He had 10 Viagra pills. He had weapons. He had knives. There was a lot of things that were very interesting. Things that seemed like a person would have with them on the run, At any rate, I guess I'm going to put to the cards and I'll go into my meditative place. Was he on the run? The defense is saying that he was just visiting his sister, but all the details of how he was found indicate that he was probably thinking about an escape, going into another country. So let me go into my meditative place and flip the camera. All right, now let me do a few more shuffles. And you can see I can't riffle shuffle this deck. This deck is very large. There's just no way I can do it. And it's actually even hard to overhand shuffle. I have to hold the cards like this. I can't even really hold them normally, which is why I would love somebody to come and give us a nice, fresh, crisp, clear viewing Anonymous Tarot of Paris deck in a nice tarot size deck. I have two copies of this deck, but I have two, publications of this deck. Okay, well, isn't this interesting? We have a Knight of Cups. So we have a young man, emotional young man on a horse. So, to answer the question, was he trying to escape or was he thinking of taking off or starting a new life somewhere? That first card gives us a feeling that maybe he was. The Loon card. The Moon card. Now, I have to laugh at the Viagra, although it's not funny. But it's like, a man wooing a woman. Like, was he thinking he was actually having romance on his mind? Like he needed Viagra? Like one of the things he needs when you take off and you go on the lam is you got to take your Viagra. I mean, he was not even probably 30 years old, for Christ's sake. I mean, he had loving on his mind, I guess. And the next card is Temperance. Now, isn't this interesting? Now, this Temperance, the water is not going into another pitcher of water, is it? It kind of looks like it's got a fire behind it. So is it putting out fire and that's smoke? I mean, this bottom thing could look like the bottom of a jug, but it could be like a hearth too, like stones in a hearth. But these are definitely flames and that's smoke. So the Temperance looks like the water's being poured on fire. Just, not in the typical way we see temperance, right? With liquid being poured from one vessel to another, but this putting something out. So he's trying to extinguish something. Isn't that interesting? So again, let me do my calculations. Because this is a court card, I don't give it any numerical value. So we have the Moon card is 18 and Temperance is 14. So I need a pen and paper because I can't trust myself anymore to do it in my head. 8 and 4 is 12 plus 1 is 32 minus 22 gives us 10. So the Wheel of Fortune would be the Quint card. So let me pull. So of course we don't have the Chariot card as the last card to make it look like travel. It begins with a young man on a horse, looking back, But moving forward, we have the Moon card, which is a card of mystery, card of, maybe he was planning on doing it that evening, things that happen at night. But it also is a card of wooing, a card about wooing in this case, right? So we still have somebody wooing, like he still thinks maybe that he has it, that he can start a new life somewhere else and start fresh, and put out the flames of the fire, and get things under control. And then we have the Wheel of Fortune to try his hand and try his luck in another place, just moving on. And so I think based on these cards and the question, was it his intent to take off? I think it was. He might have legitimately been in San Diego to see his sister and to connect with his family members, and maybe they were helping him. I don't want to put, I don't want to do that because he is alone responsible for his own behaviors and his actions, but he did have his brother's driver's license for ID, right? So maybe they were helping him because they believed in his innocence, not because they were trying to help a criminal. I can give them the benefit of that doubt, but it still seems as though it still seems shady to me. So yeah, it does seem like he's on the go. He's looking backward, but moving forward, looking maybe to just start over, have a new life, a new wife, putting out the flames of the fire and taking his chances, hoping a change of luck will help him out. I think that's what these cards suggest. I will be following this new trial very carefully, and I hope this has interested you. And until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind, do no harm.